Hello, I'm Howard. This is Joan. We're going to talk about Genesis 29 through 31. But before I get there, I want to go back to Genesis 27, where Jacob deceives Isaac. Now, Jacob, that was prompted by his mother Rebekah, disguised himself as his older brother Esau to receive the blessing from their blind father Isaac. The result is Jacob gains a blessing that should have gone to Esau, the firstborn. Okay, now we're at the point where Jacob heads east and comes across some shepherds around the well. Well, I guess this is where gathering around the office water cooler started. Who knows? Anyway, small talk led to the introduction of Rachel. It was love at first sight. This is the one that he wanted to marry. The problem? Tradition. Tradition dictates that the eldest is to be married first. Evidenced by Jacob's previous issue with the rights of the elder child, it's tradition schmadition. There's always a workaround. Now let's enter Laban, a shrewd and deceitful businessman who sees an opportunity here. Not only that, he's Rachel's father. So he makes a 7-year deal. In Genesis 29, years later, Jacob works 7 years to marry Rachel. In order for you to marry Rachel, you got to work 7 years. So he works the 7 years, and on the wedding night, Laban switches Rachel for her older sister Leah, exploiting the darkness and veil to hide her identity. Now, Jacob only realizes the trick the next morning. The result, Jacob is bound to Leah and must work another 7 years to marry Rachel. Now, there's a parallel here. The two stories share a mirrored structure. We know that Jacob deceives. Jacob is deceived. Isaac, blind, unable to recognize Jacob, and Jacob, unable to recognize Leah. The motive, gain blessing intended for the elder sibling. The motive for Laban was to fulfill a cultural custom, protect elder siblings and marriage rights, and of course, get some free labor. The outcome, Jacob gains something meant for the firstborn, and Jacob receives a firstborn daughter instead of the younger. Now, here's the irony of all this. The Hebrew narrative often works on the principle of measure for measure, which in Hebrew is midah keneged midah, the idea that one's action comes back in a mirrored form, or what goes around comes around. Now, Jacob used disguise to bypass the order of the firstborn against Esau. And later, Laban used disguise to enforce the order of the firstborn, Leah, before Rachel. In both cases, the younger supplants or supplanted by the older. The same trick Jacob used, altering recognition, is the one that was used against him. And here's where it starts getting interesting. Wouldn't you know that the one that Jacob was after, Rachel, was barren? Now, if there was a reality show made from this, it would be called The Housewives of Haran, all right? So now jealousy ensues. So in Genesis, around chapters 30 and 31, we've got pretty classic sibling rivalry going on between Rachel and Leah. First, there's initial jealousy. Leah, the older sister who actually marries Jacob first through a bit of trickery on her father Laban's part. Rachel, the younger sister, is the one Jacob originally loves and wanted to marry. So right from the start, we've got some tension here. Now, next, children is a battleground. Leah starts having children, and Rachel can't conceive at first. This leads to Rachel feeling really envious of Leah because in that time and culture, having children was a huge deal. And Leah's ability to have sons gives her kind of a status that Rachel doesn't have. Next is competition with handmaids. To even the playing field, Rachel gives her maid Bilhah to Jacob as sort of a surrogate, and Bilhah has children that Rachel claims as her own. Then Leah, not to be outdone, does the same thing with her maid Zilpah. So now both sisters are in this kind of arms race of children through their handmaids. Next we have mandrakes and bargaining. There's also kind of a quirky story about mandrakes. It's a kind of a plant thought to help with fertility. And Reuben, one of Leah's sons, brings mandrakes from the field, and Rachel wants them. They end up making a deal where Leah gets to spend a night with Jacob in exchange for these mandrakes, hoping it'll lead to more children. There's quite a bit of bargaining that's going on. So finally, we have ongoing tension and resolution. Throughout all of this, there's a lot of back and forth jealousy and competition for Jacob's affection and for status through childbearing. Eventually, Rachel does have a son, Joseph, which changes the dynamic a bit and starts to resolve some of that tension. Jacob's got this moment where he's really ready to kind of branch out on his own, if you will, and not just to keep working under his father-in-law, Laban, forever. In a nutshell, what happens is that Jacob approaches Laban and says, "Hey, I've been working for you for a long time and I've got a family now. I need to build something for myself." He basically negotiates a deal where he says, "Let's figure out a way for me to have my own flocks and to build my own wealth." And from there, I'll let Joan take over.
So my part is part of Genesis 30 and then 31. And I've titled this, Laban Stabs Jacob in the Back, but God has Jacob's back. God is faithful even when others try to hurt us. So in Genesis 30, verse 27, Laban says, "If you please, I have learned through divine inquiry that God has blessed me because of you." He went on, "So name your wages, I'll pay you." And Jacob says, "No, that's good. You don't have to pay me wages. Why don't you just give me some lambs and some goats?" And the ones that he asked to be offered were the speckled and the spotted and the blemish. And those ones couldn't have been used because you have to use a perfect lamb for a sacrifice. Those ones would have been ones that weren't as desirable. So the idea behind that, no problem. I'll take all your casts off. It's all good. So no problem. It's a problem. Laban, always a problem. What happens? Laban decides, they're all my sheep. Why should I give them away? So he goes and he gets the spotted, the speckled, and the blemished sheep and goats, and he gathers them all together into a flock, and he sends them off with his sons in a 3-day journey. So they're not really close by, so who knows where they are? They're out somewhere. So that happens. Laban is not kind. So then, in a dream, Jacob is told by God, "I want you to take some tree branches, some poplar, almond, and plane tree branches. I want you to strip the bark off of them, and I want you to put them in front of the watering trough. And when the sheep come and the goats and they mate, and they come to the watering trough and they mate, they will have blemished offspring that will be yours, even if the parents weren't." Now, I know, I'm like, what is that all about? How strange is this? Who would do that? But we're talking about God, and honestly, I think he has a sense of humor to the point that he took Moses' staff, that when he threw it on the ground, it became a snake. So what's to say God can't do that? So then in Genesis 30:43, it says, "The man got richer and richer, acquiring huge flocks, lots and lots of servants, not to mention camels and donkeys." So literally, God blessed Jacob as a shepherd, which also made Laban wealthy. And he knew that. But then God also said in Genesis 31:3 that when God said to Jacob, "Go back home where you were born, I will go with you," he was giving him a decisive command. I want you to leave here. Well, guess who doesn't want to go, right? I'm thinking you're thinking what I'm thinking. Genesis 31:4-9. So Jacob went and sent word for Rachel and Leah to meet him out in the field where his flocks were. He said, "I noticed that your father has changed his attitude toward me. It's not the same as before. He doesn't treat me as the same as before. But the God of my father hasn't changed. He's still with me. You know how hard I've worked for your father. Still, your father has cheated me over and over, changing my wages time and time again. But God never let him really hurt me. If he said your wages will consist of speckled animals, the whole flock would have started having speckled lambs." So we also know that the women felt bad too. They felt that they had been not treated well by their father, the whole situation, both Rachel and Leah. But Rachel, when they're prepping to leave, Rachel takes her dad's idols, which are like little figurines. Think about like little Mickey Mouse, little Donald Duck, little figurines. She sticks them in her pocket, right? So off they go. But I have to stop and think, why would she, if she believes in the God of Jacob, why would she find that valuable? I think why she finds that valuable is that she doesn't trust God as much as she thinks she does. So I think even in our modern day America, we can do the same thing. We can trust God and our family, trust God and our church, trust God and our nation, when we need to put trust in our God alone. So 7 days, that's how long it took Laban in the middle of sheep shearing season to go after Jacob and his family. So he's out shearing sheep out in the fields. Say that fast 3 times. He rides for 7 days. My bottom would be tired and burning. And knowing he's got to go back and shear sheep. So he is not in a good mood. And they are having a spitting fight when he gets there. But right before he gets there, the night before he gets there, he has a dream. And God says, Laban, be wise. Whatever you say to Jacob, be wise. Good or bad, be wise. So when they get there and they're starting to have a spitting fight, it ends up that through all of that, they decide that they're going to make a covenant. They make a monument of stones and have a sacrifice and worship God. So they left in peace. And Laban, the next morning, he kissed his daughters and his grandchildren and blessed them and sent them on their way. So God is faithful. It may not always look like we think it should, but he is always faithful.